What?
It's time now for My Two Favorite Librarians. Brought to you by Copper Tree Boutique in Dales Grand Market, located in beautiful, historic downtown Amherst.
Hi, this is My Two Favorite Librarians. I'm Denise Corey.
I'm Chantel Taylor, and today we're talking about podcasts. One of my favorite subjects.
Yeah, you love a podcast. I don't really listen to a lot of podcasts, so this is going to be a lot of Chantel talking.
So I'm in the midst of collaboration with Tantramar Seniors, where I'm doing podcasts over a couple of weeks, and we've talked about how you can download an app and how you find podcasts and if you want to start a podcast. And I did a couple of weeks of just recommending. And right now there are so many different podcasts out there that it's overwhelming. And there's just about anything. The other day, one of the podcasts that I listened to announced that they were starting a new podcast about gift giving customs.
And how many weeks is that going to be?
It might be ongoing. I don't know. They haven't announced all the details. They just announced that this comedian, it's called You Don't Need to Bring Me a Gift. And I was like, oh, well, how obscure.
I did subscribe to Audible just so I could get the Stephen Fry podcast on Victorian secrets.
Yes.
It was wonderful. It was filled with all kinds of historical tidbits about, Victorians and...
Because it was called Victorian Secrets, wasn't it?
Yeah, Victorian Secrets. So they talked about pornography and just all kinds of things that you don't really think about with the Victorians.
So for the most part, podcasts are free. You can download an app and you don't necessarily have to pay, but there are, like I subscribe to Spotify, so I do pay so I don't get commercials. And, I'm willing to take that $10 a month. Last year, I think I listened to 72,000 hours on Spotify, so I feel like I get my $10 a month out of it.
But there are tons that are free.
Absolutely. Spotify has actually just spent a huge amount of money to bulk up their podcast offering. So they bought a couple of companies to offer more podcasts because it's so popular. So first and foremost, just Google. If you're looking for something specific, if you have a topic you're looking for, one of the topics that we searched was like Scottish travel podcast. There are a couple out there. Knitting podcasts, crafting podcasts, sports podcasts.
And would you count vlogs in this?
It depends on how...
I'm going to rewind. A vlog is a video blog.
It's a video diary, basically, because they may not even understand what a blog is.
So some people refer to, there are YouTubers.
Yes. So, for instance, Sandy by the Lakeside, she does a knitting podcast. And to make things a little bit easier for her, she is now doing her podcast in a vlog format. So normally she would sit down in front of a camera and she would say, hi, I'm Sandy, and you can find me blah, 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 and these are the things that I've knit, and these are the things that I'm working on, and shop update, and yada, yada, yada. She's got to record it. She's got to edit it. She's got to upload it if there's any problems with it. Now she's just vlogging, so it's just her and her camera. She's walking through a couple of days of her week, and she covers all those things, but in a slightly looser format, and she finds it much easier to upload, and it may mean she uploads a little more often. So it may depend on the person.
On what you want to see, too.
Yes.
Because sometimes you might want something a little more polished.
And it also means that podcasts don't have to be strictly audio. For knitters, we want to see what you're knitting. We want to see the colors you're using. We want to see your yarn. So there are a lot of knitters who do their podcasts on YouTube. So that is something, there can be visual podcasts.
And it's not just knitting, although you and I do tend to talk about knitting a lot.
Yes, because it's something that we do, yeah.
There's one, I think you would count it as a podcast that I watch on YouTube that I love so much. It's called Sauceaholic. And all he does is talk about really bad reality TV and critique it. So 90 Day Fiancé and all of those terrible things that I love to watch.
There are lots of podcasts out there that will sort of do episode recaps of The Bachelor or Game of Thrones. I found a podcast that's sort of reliving all the Harry Potters now that we're well past Harry Potter being published.
We're never past Harry Potter.
Well, I'm not saying past it, but there's no new Harry Potter coming out. So really, it can run the gamut of things. CBC actually has a podcast called The Podcast Playlist, which is a podcast about podcasts.
And they play it on the radio.
They do, yes. But you can also get it in podcast format. One of my favorite podcast genres is true crime, which is a big one.
Oh, no. No, I cannot listen to that.
And that's fine. But it is a big chunk of what people are looking for in their podcasts. But celebrities have podcasts. Anna Faris has a very successful podcast. Dax Shepard, he's one of the top 5 podcasters in the US. Joe Rogan, I would put him in quoting marks as far as celebrity. I only remember him from news radio, but he is the biggest podcaster in the United States right now.
He's hugely popular.
There's also a podcast chart. So much like the top 40 for music, if you Google podcast chart, you can find the top Canadian chart, you can find the US, you can find what's big on iTunes, you can find what's big on Spotify, you can find other countries. So for instance, there's a hockey podcast called Spittin' Chicklets that's obviously a big Canadian podcast, not so big in the US. So really anything that you want to talk about or anything that you can think of, there's probably a podcast out there about it.
And if you wanted to record your own podcast, or if you had questions about how it's done, we have tons of books on that subject.
We don't have tons. We have a couple of books on the subject.
We have books about YouTubing and stuff as well, though.
But podcast, again, is very different because they've dealt with mostly audio. So if you're looking to start an audio podcast, we have a couple of podcasting books, but we do have a couple of books as well on YouTube.
Yes.
So a couple that I wanted to point out. So when I was doing my Tantrum Our Seniors, I wanted to find some podcasts that I wasn't necessarily listening to. So I had asked for some recommendations for people. So one of the podcasts that I found was called You're Dead to Me. And they're basically looking at sort of historical things. So like Boudica, Victorian Christmas, which Adam at work provided some very fascinating things about how sort of our Charles Dickens-esque Christmases aren't historically accurate. Joan of Arc, the Aztecs, that sort of thing. There's a couple of interesting podcasts that sort of look at folklore and like fairy tales and presents them. Not all podcasts are people just saying like, hi, I'm blah, 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 blah. Some of them are documentaries. Some of them are more dramatic. So Lore and Tales. Lore is a podcast that's about sort of scary stories, and each episode examines a historical event that shows the dark side of human nature and is presented in a style that's been compared to a campfire experience.
I'm reading that scary things.
I've never listened to Lore. It's just one that's very popular and comes up. And Tales is traditional fairy tales aren't exactly suitable for kids. And I'm not going to read some of the... It says women vomit spiders and children get eaten. So they're very dramatic and they're very... Look, those fairy tales.
Those fairy tales used to be very, very creepy.
A new trend that I see happening in podcasts is sort of almost like an old-time radio serial. So I was just listening to a podcast this morning called Blood Ties, and it's about a brother and sister who are on their way to meet their parents in the Caribbean for Christmas, and the parents' plane goes down. And it's sort of the repercussions of this couple dying. He's a very famous surgeon. He's invented this life-saving heart valve or something. And so it's like true crime, but it's not actually based on anything factual. And it stars Gillian Jacobs and Josh Gad. So Britt from Community and Olaf from Frozen. And they're actually acting out what's happening.
Like,
so it's like a
radio play.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So those seem to be happening more and more.
Everything that's old is new again.
Exactly. So whatever you're looking for beyond true crime, or if you're looking for true crime, I listen to beauty podcasts. I listen to a couple of Pokemon Go podcasts because I play Pokemon Go. I listen to financial podcasts. There's decorating podcasts. There's organizing. There's self-help. There's financial. There's business. There's politics. You name it, you can find it.
So what are you reading right now? So
currently, I am just about to finish The Five. The Untold Lives of the Women Killed by Jack the Ripper by Hallie Rubenhold. This was a fantastic book. So it doesn't talk much about the actual murder of these women, but it talks about these women and the society they were living in. I think when people talk about Jack the Ripper, they say, oh, Jack the Ripper killed prostitutes, but 3 out of the 5 women were not actually sex workers. But it was assumed because they were not employed that that's what they did. There was no other occupation. If you didn't have a job as a woman, you were a prostitute. And I'm using that word because it really was like a bat that they swung at women. If you were living in the workhouse or you were like renting a bed by the night and you didn't have a man to protect you, you were fair game. It was really depressing, and I really don't want to go back in time and live in Victorian England as an unemployed woman. It was horrifyingly awful. But it was a good read. I read it in like one night.
That is interesting. Yes, I remember you telling me about that. And we should talk about that book more later.
We can, yeah.
Yeah. I'm reading Son of a Trickster by Eden Robinson. And this is one that my book club is going to be discussing on March 24th. We meet at lunch at the library in Amherst if anybody is interested. There's no registration necessary. And this book is also one of the contenders for Canada Reads later this month. So I did not know that when I picked it. It's not that I could tell what they were going to do.
A little bit harder to get now.
Yeah. So I have finished 15 books so far this year, and 13 of them I've fit into Pop Sugar Reading Challenge categories.
Very nice.
How many books have you finished this year?
I've got 14 finished as well.
Oh, stop it. Sammy at work, who runs the CART program, I think she's at like 35 now.
Yeah, she reads. I can't even believe. I don't know where she does it. She's got like
3 children, and she works, and she's still reading almost a book a night. It's insane.
Amazing.
Yeah, I can't even compete with her, so I have to continue to compete with Chantel. Okay, so what's on at the library? Do not forget to sign up for March Break programs. March Break is coming. All of our programs are free, but many of them have limited space and require registration. So call your local library now to find out what's happening. You can find it on our website, which is
www.cumberlandpubliclibraries.ca.
Call, sign up, check to see what's happening. March Break is going to be here before you know it.
And we're going to be doing a more in-depth look at March Break programs next week.
And one other thing that I want to mention that's happening at the library is tomorrow night, Tuesday, March 3rd at 6 o'clock, the Association of Psychologists of Nova Scotia is doing a presentation called Staying in the Driver's Seat When Emotions Flare. And they're going to be talking about how to be more in control of your emotions and how to protect yourself from losing control. It sounds really interesting. So that is tomorrow, Tuesday, March 3rd at 6 o'clock at the library in Amherst. And if you want to find out more information about our programs, you can go onto our website,
www.cumberlandpubliclibraries.ca,
and go onto our calendar of events, and you will find out what we have going on. And what are we talking about next week, Chantel?
We're talking about March Break.
Okay.
See you next week.
My 2 favorite librarians. Brought to you by Copper Tree Boutique in Dales Grand Market, located in beautiful, historic downtown Amherst.